Okay, once again, we will do the sessions back to back. We will go through the materials back to back. So let's give it up to all our speakers.
Good day, everyone. I am Muhammad Zulyadri, and I am representing Transport for Bandung, a citizen-led community working to improve public transport accessibility in Greater Bandung area, Indonesia. Today, I'd like to share a story about how ordinary citizens decided to solve a transit information problem by ourselves. This is a story of how a community crowdfunded and built transit wayfinding in our city. Next. So, our story begins with a diverse yet broken transit mosaic. Greater Bandung is a home to more than 8 million people. Every day, only tens of thousands using public transit. And our challenge, besides the lack of reliable public transit, is the lack of information. Until at one point, we realized that waiting was not enough. So instead, we started build the information system ourselves from one map, one design, at one bus stop at a time. Next. Bandung actually has a surprisingly diverse public transport network, despite not that reliable. We have commuter rails, city buses, microbuses or angkot, as we call it, feeder for high-speed trains, and many informal suburban services. The problem is, every operator provides information differently, or sometimes not at all. Routes and stops and maps are fragmented across different operators and different regions. For someone using public transit for the first time, the system feels much more complicated and overwhelming than it really is. Even physical, previous slide. Even physical wayfinding was inconsistent. They have different fonts, different symbols, different designs, and even different naming conventions. Many important transport points even had no signs at all. And for many people, that uncertainty becomes a reason not to use public transit at all. Next. So we decided on mapping our way forward. Instead of waiting for the institution to solve the problem, we asked ourselves, what if citizens could build the missing information? And inspired by similar grassroots initiatives, like our friends did in Jakarta, we began creating our own transit maps and unified the wayfinding system. Routes were manually collected and interchanges were verified on site. We visited the site by walking or taking the public transit itself. And although at the first time, we knew it wasn't gonna be perfect. But perfection wasn't the goal. The goal was usability. Next. And step by step, we weave a scattered metropolis together. Today, our maps, wayfindings, and signage cover hundreds of locations across Greater Bandung. And more importantly, They connect different transport systems into one understandable network. Instead of seeing separated bus systems or rail services, users begin seeing one integrated public transport information system. Next. And the impact was this empowers citizens to ride with confidence, especially for first-time users. They became more confident and tourists could navigate unfamiliar stops. Daily commuters shared our maps with friends and family by words of mouth. And even some people told us our maps and websites were the first resource they searched before using public transport. This proves that good information reduces uncertainty. Next. And we bring this grassroots action to the policy table. This surprised us. Government agencies and transport authorities started paying attention. Several stakeholders began discussing standardized maps and wayfindings more seriously. A community initiative helped move transit information system from a volunteer project to a policy conversation. And that was something we never expected when we started. Next. And what was the lesson learned? For us, looking back, we learned two important lessons. First, don't wait for perfect conditions. A small, imperfect prototypes can demonstrate value faster than long discussions. And second, collaboration matters. Local communities, the people, the government have different strengths. And real change happens when those strengths come together, not against each other. Next. And by now, our story is not really about Bandung. It's about the idea that us, citizens, can help build better city. Every city has problems to tackle. Yet, every city has people who care. Sometimes all it takes is one map to start changing the system. And we hope our experience in Bandung inspires similar movements across Southeast Asia. And we look forward to learning from your cities as well. Hatur nuhun. Terima kasih. Thank you.
Moving on to the next speaker, so we invite. We invite Fusionwerks to speak over the wayfinding in Klang Valley MRT. The floor is yours. Thank you.
My eyes are not that good. I can't hold my phone. I use my iPad to read. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kairi from Fusionwerks. We are basically the wayfinding consultancy based here in KL. Today, I'd like to share not just the KVMRT project itself, but more importantly, the lessons we learned from the strategy all the way to the implementation. Rather than showing you hundreds of pages from the design guideline manual, I'd like to explain the thinking behind it, basically. Next. Okay, I'll do it quickly for this. Basically, who we are. Fusionwerks specializes in wayfinding strategy, environmental graphics design, and signage design systems. Unlike traditional graphic design studios, our work begins long before any sign is designed. Okay, this aspect is always a problem as wayfinding consultant when we engage projects or clients. Clients always like to see the design first. Can you come up with the design first? I said, no, it's basically the wayfinding strategy always comes first. So therefore, the design is a solution after the strategy has been established. I mean, that has always been our challenge to actually educate the client. We study how people move, where they make decisions, and how information should be presented through a built environment. Today, we work across transportations, hospitals, commercial development, hotels, and mixed-use development throughout the region. Okay, next. All right, we can skip this. All right, basically, this is basically what we always explain to people. What do we do? So basically, what is wayfinding? So the most obvious term is how we say it. In a nutshell, we deliver your message to the right people at the right time and the right place with the right tools for the right result. Basically, that's pretty much it. Signage is not even mentioned. Signage is not wayfinding, basically. It's just one of the tools of wayfinding. Right, next. All right, on KVMRT, we start with a challenge because the brief was for us to solve the problem. Okay, what was the challenge? The biggest challenge wasn't designing signs. It was creating one consistent experience across an entire rail network. At the beginning of the project, there wasn't a comprehensive wayfinding study. As what I mentioned, that basically we came in always the last to come in. So I put it simply, when it comes to wayfinding, we are always the last to come in, but the first to be criticized. Yep. Messaging at that time was still evolving. I mean, imagine plotting the signages but without knowing the actual terminology. Architectural layouts were always changing. Multiple stakeholders. Oh, this is the most toughest of all. Multiple stakeholders. We have operators. We have the advertising team, and then we have the management team, and also the naming rights team. Naming rights team. All right. So yet every station had to feel familiar to the station, to the passengers. At that time, MRT Line 1, the concept of the underground station was each station actually has different style. If you go to Bukit Bintang, you will notice that it's in red in color. Why is red? I'm not going to explain why. You just find out why Bukit Bintang is in red. And then you have Museum Negara. We have all designed individually. We have different characteristics. But the whole navigation has to be seamless. That's why we always say MRT network is a living system. Every station may look different, but the passenger experience must remain consistent. Next. All right. Our role in the project was to extend well beyond graphic design. We began by creating the project brief, develop the wayfinding strategy. Just let me dwell on the wayfinding strategy bit. At that time, the strategy was to get people out faster than people getting in. It's more out, exit, way out, way out. So if you notice, MRT uses way out rather than exit. Don't ask me why. Is again was way out or why is exit? Is because okay, the project has different sets of stakeholders, as mentioned. Some, if you work with architects, or if you work with project management, if you work with clients, there's always either the American way, US, or the British way. Why? The US always like to use the term way out. We don't see way out anywhere in Malaysia except for MRT. All right, and then there's also the leveling. If you work with architects from US, train, there's no such thing as ground level. It's basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's no G, U, G, L, G. That's very British. But Malaysia, we are basically more towards British. Don't get me on TRX. Yeah. If we go, we mentioned special mention TRX. TRX naming rights is basically Samsung, right? Why do you think Samsung is aggressive there? Anybody know? Exactly. Because the Apple flag store is there. So it's basically it's a battlefield. The MRT has become a battlefield. It's not just MRT. I remember you mentioning about was it Roy? Roy shared about the naming rights. Why you have Grab, but then that's pretty much as what Prasarana mentioned. It's basically business. I think maybe I'm not sure whether overseas, but it's a Malaysian thing. It's not just naming rights on the line maps. It also based on if you ride the train, you will hear ting ting Aeon Maluri, Pavilion Bukit Jalil. So basically, they expect everyone to shop. Basically, it's always, and then the naming rights takes precedence, not the station. So this starts with us from the start of the project till the very end of the project. Right? It's basically the information hierarchy at number 4. Don't get me started at what number 4 as well. It's a Malaysian thing. I should put it 3A. Okay. Graphic language. Graphic language also is also back to information hierarchy. Basically, what comes first? It's always the main argument was station name first or the sponsor first. All right. So then we come up with a design guideline manual and a tender review. All this within less than 6 months. We were there to basically firefighting. The original consultant was UK based. The problem they were booted out was the problem of having it understanding the project locally. Because this UK based, they tend to use a lot of terminology and design based on UK, not localized. All right. So next. All right. So basically, in terms of timeline, so we did. Let me see. I lost my screen. I can the one before the timeline. All right. Okay. Our involvement didn't stop after MRT Line 1. During construction, we discovered many practical lessons. There was actually called, where the operational feedback is actually a lesson learned. So MRT Line 1, we did the DGM in number 2. Then we did the tender review, site supervision, and it ends. Team basically for Line 1. Then we were called in to do the lessons learned under operational feedback. Then the starting of MRT Line 2, the revision of DGM. The DGM is, you can see on the table, there's basically Line 2 sample that we did. The DGM, we did DGM for book 1, book 2, book 3, which is the elevated station, the underground station, and the depot. Combined is almost about 1,000 over pages. Oh, okay. All right, next. Okay, what makes a wayfinding system? I often tell designers something that sounds controversial. Wayfinding is not about creativity, it's about consistency. It's form over function. Creativity gets attention, yes. Consistency builds confidence. That's why we standardize everything. Typography, colors, icons, arrows, sign families, graphic language. When every element speaks the same language, people don't need to think. They simply know where to go. Next. All right. This is most probably the most important slide for today. I mean, for my slide. Okay, this is probably the most important slide today. Most people think wayfinding equals signage. Okay, this is always a problem. Everyone say, can we have a wayfinding there? Can we have a wayfinding here? No. It's that signage. Wayfinding is beyond that. Actually, wayfinding is understanding passenger behavior, decision points, movement, information timing, consistency. The location plan shown here is simply deciding where the sign should, not where the sign should go. It's basically where the passengers are likely to become uncertain. Every sign exists because someone somewhere might hesitate for just a few seconds. So our job is actually to remove that hesitation. Not create signage, not where the signage has to be, is to remove any sense of hesitation. Right. Last. Next. Can I skip this? All right. We were asked if we could do it again. If we had the opportunity to do it again, we'll begin this strategy even earlier. As Adrian mentioned, it should be done before the station layout becomes fixed. It should be together with the architecture rather than after. Last but not least, I will put in something to think about. So to us, wayfinding succeeds when people reach their destination without having to think about the sign. I remember, I can't remember, he was saying that he got lost by looking at the sign. So basically, wayfinding is beyond signage. It's about having to reach the destination without looking at the sign. Thank you so much.
Next up, we have 5 from Thailand Walking and Cycling Institute.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Here I'm Phai from Thailand Walking and Cycling Institute Foundations. And today we're going to talk about the topic that I think is less talked about the most in the realm of the wayfinding system here, which is the cycling navigations fighting wayfinding. As a emerging cities, Bangkok has, just developing the bicycle network system like in less than 4 years ago. We usually 10 years ago we usually have bicycle network in Bangkok, but it purely purpose for sport and pressure, and that's all about it. So it's hasn't been continued since then, but we just start come back again like 4 years ago. So I'm not gonna pretending that I know what I'm talking about because I'm not an expert in wayfinding designer. But today I'm gonna share experience as a cyclist myself that use bicycle everyday life. So the challenge for the cyclist, I wouldn't say cyclist. That's just a bicycle user. The challenge for bicycle user in Bangkok is, of course, first thing that come into mind is the safety of cycling in Bangkok. People always think about like they don't know where to situate themselves on the road. For example, like the first picture here on the left, as you can see, like should I be on the shoulder lane, or should I be on the carriageway, or should I be on the sidewalk? It's very confusing as a cyclist to ride bicycle in Bangkok. And the second thing is we don't know which route to use to avoid the hectic of the traffic, because there's a lot of cars on the road and we don't want to be among them. So we want to have separated space for us to ride safely. And last but not least is we're not sure if the path that we are taking is leading us to our destinations without cutting off, or we have to getting off the bike and carrying the bike up to stair or such a thing like that. So for example, like the picture in the middle here, as you can see, like there's a bicycle pathway on the sidewalk here, but it's split into two separated way One is going straight to the street, and the other one is curving along the sidewalk on the left. But we're just wondering, like, if I go straight, then I go where? you know. And the other example is on the sidewalk. There's I don't know why, but the city likes to have like one pole for one sign. So if you have 3 signs, you have 3 poles like that. So that's why you can see like in Bangkok, you full of the signage, the pole obstruct you on the sidewalk a lot. So we really need something to guide us when we traveling, navigated into Bangkok hectic traffic by using bicycle. So talk about the marking, the surface of road marking and the traffic sign first, because I'm the one who write the design manual for Bangkok Metropolitan Administrations myself. In 2019, we used to have like a standard signage for bicycle that painted on the floor. And you could see that they are more focusing, especially the bicycle sign, they are more focusing on like a racing kind of type of bicycle there, right? So in 2024, we come together and we rethinking of bicycle as an everyday use. So we kind of, change the signage a little bit to be like more of the utility bike with the basket in front, and we want to emphasize on the human side of rather than just vehicle. So that's why we have upright cyclist person riding in the middle, and we also having the for example, like the most right one is the chair part between cyclists and pedestrians. So we designed as pedestrian should be on the top, and the cyclist should be on on the bottom with the line that separate them to indicate that the pedestrian should have first priority more than the cyclist when they share path together. And the next thing I want to talk about the elongations of the symbol. Since because the marking would be painted on the floor, on the surface of the road, right? So when we looking at the sign, we don't look straight up from the top view, right? We look forward. So it should be elongated enough to be able to distinguish the signage, the marking on the road. So basically we use 1 to almost to 1.9 ratio elongations. And this is a final versions of the design, and it's being standardized right now for Bangkok. And we also designed the separate type of bicycle path. The first one is being separated from the carriageway all total together, and having like either separated cycling path and or the chair part with the pedestrians, and the middle one is a cycling lane. And so in each different type of bicycle path, we have different type of the traffic signage to indicate that. So the cyclists would actually know where they should situate themselves on which space that have this type of sign. And we talk about the wayfinding a little bit here, because in the standard, I also designed a standard wayfinding on the left side, the top left here, but the committee member stating that it look more like a highway kind of signage, so they don't accept it. Anyway, so this is a real implementation showing in Bangkok right now. So as you can see on the right, bottom right corner of the pictures, you see that that symbol is not elongated to compare with other on the left side that is being elongated, which look a lot clearer for cyclists to look at. So about the wayfinding itself, because cyclists would move faster than pedestrians, right? So the cyclists move around 15 kilometers per hour versus pedestrians that move 4 kilometers per hour. That's why the wayfinding sign should be able to see at least 10 meters away, right? And because of the cyclists have to deal with all the traffic, uh, that's why the density of the informations on the wayfinding signage should not be like more than 2 or 3 things, right? Because they're gonna lose the focus on the wayfinding sign while they're riding. And the travel radius for the walking is around for 5 minutes is around 300, and for cyclists is about 1.2 kilometers in 5 minutes. So the destinations could be somewhere in between, like kilometers away, that would possible. So we had the example that we did with the Asomsin Institute of Art last year to create pilot projects for wayfinding for Bangkok. So the signage here, the wayfinding signage here, we designed to be like long, so it be able to put on the utility pole and not obstruct the moving vehicle. And this is example of the design, which have like the main destinations on top and the secondary destinations on the bottom. And here's example of the installations. That's you can see that we put on the utility pole here, and also on the traffic pole here. And so the feedback of the design here, we were told that the signage is too small for actually being used as a standard. And that also the destinations that listed on the sign is too vague, meaning that because the destination is not really the place that the cyclists would want to go. For example, like most of them are like the market and the temple, you know. So we still have a long way to study about this. And since we are here together, and also the Mayday teams from Thailand here, so I want to use this opportunity to ask them to help us on designing, because they are expert on the wayfinding designer. Right? So I want to ask them to help us on the designing proper standardized of the wayfinding system for bicycle for Bangkok. Well, thank you so much.
Lastly, from WRI Indonesia.
Okay, hello everyone. I hope you're still energized this afternoon with after having meals. I think I myself a little bit sleepy, so to be honest. Yeah. So hi everyone, my name is Riri. I'm representing for WRI Indonesia, and we were asked to share with you all about our co-creative approach in designing wayfindings and also inclusive public transport systems in Bali. So before I start, maybe I would like to ask if any of you have ever traveled to Bali before. Raise of hands. Okay. So now keep raising your hands if when you travel to Bali, you use public transport. Okay, a lot of hands are lowered. Okay, I see some show of hands. All right, thank you. Actually, I don't blame you all if you don't really use public transport when you travel to Bali, because we actually have Transmetro Dewata and also Transarbagita in Bali as public transport. There are two different operators that are currently operating in Sarbagita metropolitan area. They cover around 28% of the Sarbagita population, but surprisingly and unfortunately, they only serve below 1% of the potential passengers there. So you can really imagine how scarce it is, the public transport condition in Bali. Now, I know that accessibility is an issue, but I would also like to take you all to a different lens from the information gap here. So I would like to share with you all that there's actually 3 different information gaps that build difficulties in Bali's public transit, and we will go deep dive into each of them. So the first one is the awareness gap. I would say that people simply do not know that public transport exists in Bali, right? And the second, there's also knowledge translation gap, where our decision makers continue to go with business as usual approaches to designing public transport infrastructure. And lastly is the information gap, where there's a group of people that is actually using public transport despite the limited information and infrastructure there. So the first one is the awareness gap. I would like to talk about how Bali actually does little to make our public transport visible, including signage and also wayfinding here. You can see from the 2 pictures that bus stops is located highly above pedestrian level. So you can actually imagine if you just go to Bali and you want to search for bus stops, you kind of have to look up there so to find the signage itself. And you know, bus shelters are limited, streets do not communicate the presence of public transport here. You can't really see in each bus stops if there's any marking of bus stops, so you don't know if you're standing right above a bus stop or you need to kind of find another place. And signage is actually very sparse and difficult to read, so it's hard for people to know that it's hard for them to acknowledge that there is actually public transport operating in Bali. Now, the second is the knowledge translation gap. There's actually a disconnection between research and implementation. We currently have shared research with policymakers. Maybe you can also see there's also a recommendation of design and information created by Mas Yasin here from Transport for Jakarta. So thank you for your collaboration and support here. But sadly, the research here that we have already given to our policymakers are not translate as much to the transport infrastructure, and the political decisions also kind of doesn't really make it more inclusive here. You can see that MRT or even a water taxi is much more favorable than just for them to increase public transport to resolve traffic jams along Sarbagita there. So now, the third is the information access gap. There is actually an informal network of information exists to compensate the lack of information systems, the lack of transport facilities. You can I'm sorry, this is in Indonesia, but you can actually see that there's a WhatsApp group from the communities of the Bali, the public transport users themselves. They kind of like to ask in the group, maybe example, they ask if they want to go from Icon Mall to Dewi Sartika, what route should they take, or if they want to go to stop A to stop B, where is the effective route, what's the bus route that I should take, and where is the bus stop. So there's an informal network of information that is built upon the scarce condition of the public transport, because you can see in the right picture that's just taken about last week. Yeah, so this is very new, still new. Now, I would also like to share how did the process unfold here in Bali. We actually use a co-creating approach at the grassroots level. You can see this is actually a documentation where in Bali, around 2025, our public transportation is actually in halt because of funding cuts. And then this kind of started where the community or the public transport users becomes more aware, and they want to make some kind of a coalition, or just a community there. And this is when it starts to reactivate. You can see that the users is mainly women, mothers, elderlies here. So there's a lot of diverse users that kind of use the public transport here. So now, after the reactivation, actually on July, we had a workshop to give capacity building to the communities. At this time, Transport for Bali has been formed, and we also invite Mas Yasin from Transport for Jakarta to give a capacity building on how to design inclusive bus stops and also wayfinding. This is just the media that we used. We kind of use cutouts also and stickers to reimagine how could we make a better wayfinding in Bali. And then the next step of the co-creation approach is that we try to establish around 30 wayfinding along with Transport for Jakarta, ITDP, and also I think there's also, I kind of forgot, there's a lot of organizations that follow along as well. You can actually see from the picture, there's a before and after wayfinding that's located in the airport there. And then next is actually the steps where the community kind of took their own initiative. They start to grow and build their own research. They audit bus stops by themselves, and they kind of actively participates in public events to advocate for Bali's public transport there. So what I want to share is what actually changes here as a result. We kind of see from time to time that the community really rooted in their roles to play a meaningful role in the development of Bali's public transport, including signage, wayfinding. They started as an organic community. Then they have a lot of capacity building sessions. Then they Transport for Bali became a collaborator on-site activities or even research, conducting surveys, mini research of bus stop audits, and then they can become an advocator. They also go to schools to advocate to children's, and then at the end they are able to become more of a monitoring function about updates on damages or installation of new wayfinding designs, and also they tend to monitor regarding the public transport system's quality as well. So we can actually see that by time to time they kind of grow by themselves. And yeah, this is just a little documentation that we want to share here too. They tend to do knowledge sharing in academic environments. They go to schools, reach out to institutions, academic institutions. They advocate to the general public. This picture here is when there's a car-free day and they go to the streets and advocate for their public transportation. And then at the end, they are able to monitor updates on damage or installation of new wayfinding signs and bus stops. So they're pretty active now, and we kind of have to catch up with them at the end. Yeah. So now what actually changes as a result too, I can see some examples where it also leads to adoption to the policy level. Bali's Transport Agency has the initiative to design and build a more inclusive bus stops. They have designed around 3 bus stops, adopting inclusive design. And then the public transport communities are included in the policy development forum. I think this is a very groundbreaking step because in Bali itself, I would say that the policy is tend to rooted in viral-based policy. sometimes they don't really co-create with the communities or the users itself to build their policies. But now Transport for Bali is involved in Bali's province's low carbon development plan, which is, I think that's a very good sign. The provincial legislative council also held a hearing with the Transport for Bali regarding the sustainability of public transportation funding. And lastly, we can also see that actually private sector is beginning to show interest in participating towards wayfinding projects. There's actually 13 wayfinding signs and new bus stops that have been installed. This is just a typical governmental video from the transport agency in Bali. This is very typical. You can see it's just a collage of photos, but yeah, this is you can actually see that wayfinding and what the community has been done is rooted in a lot of stakeholders, the private sector, institutions, and also legislative bodies. So now I would also like to share with you all that there's actually a change in a result regarding media, or even how would I say this, like media stakes. You can see here that in December 2020, it has peaked there because that's the end of the free service period of the Transmetro Dewata, because they had like a 3-month time for free tariffs. And then you can see in January 2025, when the bus services begin to halt due to budget cuts, then they go peak again when there's a reactivation. And after April 2025, you can see that the trends for Transmetro Dewata kind of, how do you say, it's like dynamic, because you can see that in July and August, Transport for Bali actively advocates to the transport agency, and you can see how public interest in the media kind of have a stakes there. So I would say that you can actually see how advocating or collaborate with communities can also make public transport or even wayfinding or signage a sustainable issue, not only in the grassroots level, but also the policy makers level there. Now, this is just an example of several medias that we have. Wayfinding is frequently mentioned as the crucial part to make public transport more reliable. You can also see how the communities are actively becoming a monitoring tools here, where you can see there's a wayfinding that kind of that it's a little bit broken, and you can see the sentiment is a lot of disappointments in the comment section. And yeah, we kind of see how communities are taking the initiative. Public transport is becoming more and more discussed in Bali itself. So now, several key lessons that we have learned along the way here. I know this is a very long process, but several lessons that we've learned here that I think co-creation approach actually makes ideas stick and sustain at the grassroots and decision-making levels. Policy tend to change faster when communities are engaged and also nurtured. Not only engaged, right, but also we have to nurture the communities itself. And then an inclusive and context-sensitive wayfinding is very much needed. I think we're still progressing to reach there, but yeah, that's what I can share briefly. I am very happy to talk with you after the session if you have any other questions, but that's all from me now. Thank you, everyone.
Another set of impressive speakers with